Hello, everyone. I'm Doug Campbell-John, and welcome to this week's episode of Revenue Renegades. This week, I am excited to welcome Ratchet Kataria, the CEO and co-founder of Centralize, to the show. Welcome, Ratchet.
Good to be here, man. It's always nice to see you.
Great to see you. So as you know, like we love founding stories. So let's start there. Tell us, a little bit about how the idea for Centralize came about.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, I would say. I mean, first, there's no company without meeting your co-founder and that
Mhm.
part of the adventure. So, very, very lucky to have met William Wang, who's my co-founder. He and I went to school at USC together for undergrad, masters. Met
Mhm.
first week of college at our school's entrepreneurship club. So,
Cool.
10 plus years later, he was my groomsman, I was his. We've been roommates, we've been study partners, all the above before the kind of final jump into being founders, or co-founders. And yeah, we just seen a bunch of experiences over both of our careers till that point. We've both been engineers by trade, so
Mhm.
in that interesting cohort of engineers building for go-to-market, having not necessarily sold anything before, officially, but just being adjacent to that and kind of the roles we played. We've always been product engineers, meaning
Mhm.
we've been the engineers supporting the AEs and the CSMs and the AMs on what do we build that is actually important to the customer.
Yep.
I'd seen actually this a lot at A2B, which was a company that I worked at prior. It was a YC company, and I was their product tech lead. So I would literally go, and I should give context. A2B is a fuel card for trucking, literally
Okay.
like a Visa card for fleets to go buy gas. And
Okay.
so I would go to truck stops and company HQs and go with the CSM and AM on what what am I building that is going to be most relevant for you for the enterprise, and how does that actually change your life? And just seeing the ability of when the best reps can manage relationships really, really well and understand them, it's smooth sailing. When
Mhm.
you know what that CFO cares about that is different from the head of fleet, from the driver, and actually can speak to each of those, life's good. We, in other instances, have been hit with insane churn cases that kind of showed up out of the blue. And I actually had to pause all of EPD for 2 weeks when one of these really critical ones came through, multi six-figure deal. And
Mm.
surprise, surprise, what had happened? The main champion left the company, no one knew. The new person that came in was not actually important, in our eyes, even though he was one of the most important people we should have known about. We didn't understand that just from his email domain emailing us. The context was in a gong call 10 months ago that no one remembered to look at, and the person who brought them in was no longer at the company. So everything's scattered, tribal knowledge is gone, shifting underneath you, priorities have changed. I spent 2 weeks built it, didn't matter. We're in the back half. It didn't change their mind. That's such a painful experience to see. Like, relationships are so important to maintain, and if you don't, it's very quick to all just kinda shriveling away, and then you kinda lose what got you in there. And so that was just a really, enlightening experience in some ways on how important it is to visualize and understand that story. On the flip side, my co-founder, Will, he created Slack Huddles. He built it from scratch. He worked with Cal Henderson, Noah Weiss, a bunch of the crew over there, many of our favorite angels actually on the cap table. And when he was building that experience, it was that problem at Huddle's scale. Like, they had to delay a launch of one of their biggest rollouts because no one had a consistent picture, AE, CSM, frontline manager, up to the CRO, of who cares about this and why? Who is the champion? Why are they important to us? Like, none of that was in any consistent picture. So TLDR, what we had back in November 23 when we ultimately applied and got into YC was two parts of the thesis. A, somehow relationships are really, really difficult to understand, but arguably the most important thing you can do in any customer facing motion, new biz or expansion. And two, for the first time, AI with GPT 3.5 can actually make sense of it and turn this into something that is meaningful and understandable beyond just tables inside of a CRM. And that was kind of the combined set of experiences that got us to YC. I can share so much more about kind of the meandering journey and idea maze, but that was the founder story of who we met, how we got together, and then also just kind of the experiences that brought us to this core problem of like it's really tough to understand the dynamic shifting relationships in your accounts at the scale of 50 or 100. There's nowhere to really go and understand and see that today. And that was
Yep.
kind of the plan of the seed of Centralize.
So obviously, being at a massive, company that's still a rocket ship like Meta is very different than, kind of
Yeah.
saying, "Oh, we're going to go bet on ourselves," right? what was the moment where you're like, okay, I'm going to leave the safety of this nest and bet on ourselves?
Yeah, I like to think it's easier to paint this picture retroactively, but I always eventually wanted to go found something or build something, of my own, and I had a very intentional path I tried to stick to, which was I wanna go learn from the best first and be a really, really good engineer and be self-sufficient to go build what we need to build in the world. And that was my stint at Meta for 2.5 years, basically going from, like, new grad to senior engineer, scaling up shops from scratch. Actually, I also cool thing about Meta is it's boot camp structure. You can kinda choose which team you wanna work on.
Huh.
And I lucked out slightly intentionally on being the team that became the founding team of Facebook Shops, which was the alpha that we'd shipped in May 2020
Yeah.
of bringing e-commerce to the platform. And really great experience. We went from 0 to a quarter billion monthly active users in a year, which is kind of insane. It helps when
Great.
you have 5 billion users naturally, or
Right.
3 or whatever they're at now. Um, but even so, getting that almost startup in a big company as close as I could get to that, it was really great. And then I wanted to go a step smaller. I was like, okay, senior engineer know how to build.
Hmm.
What about everything else? Founding a company is not just building the product, it is learning how to go to market works, learning from founders, it's all the things that come with the people and the hiring and influencing an org and being a founder people look up to as part of kind of championing the business.
Mhm.
All of that I really optimized for when I went to A to B, which was that kind of smaller Series B YC company. And then ultimately the final leap was okay. I would spend hours going on walks with the founders on the Embarcadero every other week. I'd pick their brains. I'd still build as close as I could to the product. And there's this perfect combo of also seeing the pain that I felt was something that was scalable that Will resonated with when he was at Slack.
Mhm.
And that combined gave us the, you know what, maybe this is a little um, presumptive, but if the worst thing is I have to go back to big tech and hopefully Zuck will have me, that's not the worst backup plan, if you will. Let's take a bet on ourselves. Let's make something we know is real. And that's what we were planning for in the first place.
So speaking of bet on yourselves, I remember coming across a post you did that was like 5 years ago. You wouldn't have bet on yourself, right? Um,
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about like what kind of caused that reflection and how that's changed.
Yeah, 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 you did your homework, man. I love it.
Mhm.
I like that post because I think it was 5 years ago. I was just an engineer at Meta, like one of
Mhm.
thousands of people, and I lucked out into building something I think was largely more impactful than a lot of what you get to build at Meta, which is 0.01% increments on newsfeed efficiency, which is fine. But I wanted to build something that was more ground up, and just going from that to you know this very well as a founder yourself, just like everything else that it takes to not just build the product, but like grow yourself as a manager, grow yourself as a product lead, as the first seller of the company, of all the hats that you have to wear, is just one of those like if we don't take the leap now and I have a lower risk tolerance, why not? Like
Yeah.
let's make it happen. And Will and I always talk about this for our hires too. It's the classic slope versus y-intercept. Like maybe our y-intercept spiked really high on Eng, but our slope was also very high for everything else we wanted to complement ourselves with. And I think
Right.
it was just that mindset that we put ourselves into as we went through YC and the pressure cooker of those 3 months and
Mhm.
everything that came from there. And it's also just the expectation we have for anyone that's joining the company is like,
Right.
you might have started somewhere, but the teams that fall behind are the ones that just assume where they started is what they're gonna maintain versus the ones that'll lap them because they're scaling.
Are there things that, I mean, again, big company, startup, radically different environments. Some people can't make that transition. Were there things that you thought you would carry over from Meta that actually, like when you tried to implement as a first time founder, you were like, you kind of had to unlearn for
Yeah,
Central?
I actually think it was more like things I really liked about Meta because I joined a startup-esque team that became
Mhm.
progressively worse over the 2 years that I actively wanted to avoid going back, and it
Okay.
was that, like it was really cool actually in May. I mean, it was literally a Zuck down mandate, like, "I don't care about security reviews and InfoSec right now, like, this needs to ship by May 16th. Go."
Mm.
It was a Tiger team, and it was just all about building the best product and shipping it. And then naturally teams scaled around it. There became 10 shops, orgs, all the integrations.
Right.
One of the most impactful things I shipped was adding the view and shop button on the tile
Mhm.
in a like news feed, uh, basically picture of the shop making a post. Unsurprisingly, putting in an entry point to shops that says view and shop is going to drive a lot of traffic. It took me like 2 months to get through design reviews because that was just out of the UI pattern for Facebook. There was no separate CTA on a post normally. It's just the
Right.
person, the content, and then the post.
Right.
Drove probably the biggest, like, impact I had that quarter for PSCs for my performance reviews. It was a two-line change, it took 2 months to do. And at a
Yeah.
certain point, I was like, "Alright, I get it," because if everyone did that, newsfeed and Facebook would look like a Frankenstein product, and at that
Right.
scale, you have to do that. But that's not what made it so amazing in those first few months. And I think what Facebook does really well is when it wants to, it can turn on the ship at all costs, like focus on the product and the people. And it's all open. You reach out to whoever you want to, and they'll give you the time of day to make sure it works.
Mhm.
That kind of open and connected internally mentality, like it's all horizontal and no one is thinking structurally as like, there's hierarchies of who's going to help me out, who's a VP, who's an IC. It's
Yeah.
just built the best product. I think that really is what carried over.
Okay. So, you mentioned Will worked on Slack huddles, you on Facebook Shops. What would you say was harder kind of getting to that? I think you mentioned was it 250 million or metric
The users, yeah.
on Facebook Shop? It was harder to getting to that, or you're getting to your first kind of 10 customers for
Oh,
centralized?
you definitely know the answer to that question, dude. I think it's for sure the latter. I mean,
Yeah.
even a repeat founder, you know how it goes. I think Meta, you get the benefit of scale, right? Like, why all these big companies, try to innovate or be product leaders is because to some degree, once you have distribution, it's about you just need really good product and you can bring it to the market. And Meta naturally, kind of why I jokingly said when it helps when you have 3 billion people on the platform is to bring something new that is meaningful and then pull in whatever, like a 12th of that is not crazy, once you have it. Startup, no one knows about you, right? Like we're just truly starting from the ground up. It's great that we have the stamps of Meta and Slack and, YC at the time, but the world basically owes you nothing. Like, unless you're solving a real problem, it is a very risky bet to place in at that time, team of 2 on a product that's untested and you're kinda first to the market. And that was quite a roller coaster too. Just so much of it was being in the right rooms, leaning on our personalities and ourselves as people and willingness to just almost be your right hand to get that problem solved for you, and we can be the people to do it, to earn the trust that then started compounding. I'll still shout out, like, easily one of my favorite people, Tanner Lacey, VP Sales at Sendoso. He's one of the
Mhm.
first people who truly took a bet on us as a company, and this was way back at GTM 24 in SaaStr last year when we first met
Okay.
the team there, showed him the core of the product. Sendoso was like, "This actually makes a ton of sense in terms of going horizontal in our revenue org of being on the same page, mapping, getting high and wide, like multi-threading should be a core focus." And we launched with them and yeah, we were like wall to wall in the entire company now. Like AEs, AMs, CSMs, SDRs, marketing, the whole crew is in centralized. And it's like folks like that that really allowed us to then go to the next and say, "Hey, Sendoso loves us. What about you?"
Right.
And so on and so on. That was really tough in the beginning, but it's I think a lot of it's like, are you if you're in the right rooms, you kinda increase your surface area of luck, and enough good things start happening, and people that like what you're doing and like you as a person and take the bet, and just from there, I think then it's on you to compound that.
Yeah, and I would assume, like, we've run into each other at a bunch of events, and I always assume I'm gonna see you at an event because you're putting yourself out there, and I imagine, like, coming at this, not having that network already built, not having that set of, customer relationships from your given your backgrounds, you just have to, it's all about putting yourself out there and having that extra hustle to go make it happen, and getting those first customers in the door. You mentioned a great phrase earlier I loved, which was kind of no map, no deal. Tell me a little bit about the current centralized product and how does where did that phrase come from? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, a lot of this is so much, of just the idea maze. Like, I have never sold enterprise sales before. I've been building hopefully great products for enterprises, but I think the biggest learning from the 3 months of YC, talking to as many VPs of sales, CROs, VP success, ICs that would give us a time of day, it was this recurring topic of multi-threading.
Mhm.
And we initially had this thesis that it was enough to just have like a GPT over the words that are being spoken. That's
Mhm.
great. That's like, That's almost a commodity these days. You can ask any question about anything. GPT released their connectors flow. Anyone connecting data asking questions, simple enough. The unlock became that Gong call that I had. Yes, you can ask me and answer questions about that call, but who was Doug.Campbelljohn at, you know, Gong.com on that call? Was that
Mm,
the CRO? Was that the AE? Was that the head of marketing? And that tells a very different picture on if you're actually in a good spot in this account. Because
mm,
people always like to say in sales, there's so many like trite phrases, you have to be in the right rooms with the right people at the right time, or saying the right thing to the right person at the right time.
yep.
Who's who in the zoo? There's a fun of these like fun one-liners, but it all just comes down to if you don't know that you're talking to the right people, you're not gonna win that deal. Just doesn't matter. There's this idea of happy years, right? Like, everyone thinks that they're just because someone likes them, that they're your champion,
Uh-huh.
and that you're in a good spot and this deal's gonna progress. And they go on vacation, they never come back, and, "Oh, shit, that forecast is not getting hit, or we're not gonna make it happen." And multi-threading that kept coming up was just the simple idea that if this is truly something that's gonna be important to that org, you need to understand, do I have a champion? Do I have an economic buyer who's gonna sign off? Do I have a decision maker that's on board and it's their team? Do I have really all the people in between that are gonna be my coaches to help me navigate the org? Fortunately or unfortunately, buying is not that simple. Selling is not that simple either. And so much of it is that relationship orchestration. And it's funny, like, you've been obviously part of so many sales orgs, you've seen them, everyone I talk to, it's the same kinda, like, tired story every quarter. You pretend you're strategic 1 week that quarter in QBRs. Everyone goes and builds a beautiful looking Figma or PowerPoint or Miro or Lucid of where they're trying to think about the org. Because you're not selling to the org, you're selling to people at that org, so it's all about the people. And then what happens? It goes stale. No one looks at it ever again. What was the point? You spent all these hours for nothing just to pretend, and then you do the exact same thing a week later or a quarter later. And the reason is because how can you feasibly across 50 accounts in your book update every person that's come and gone? Have we talked to them? When's the last time? What do they care about? It's untenable. And so the easy thing to do is to not do it. And then everyone thinks it's homework. But arguably it's the most important piece of collateral if you had it every step of the way because it's literally the GPS into where you need to go and if you're in the right spot or not. And so TLDR was zooming back out, no map, no deal is just a simple framing of if you don't know if you're in the right rooms and have that map, how can you think that you're going to win this account? If you see empty boxes across the entire VP row, this deal is not closing. It's simple. It's like almost objectively true that it's not going to work out. But you need that every day of the week so you don't get to end of quarter and deals are slipping or stalling because you got caught up with one person that was not going to get you to the finish line. That is the thesis that's powering all of Centralize.
So, the multi-threading term, I think I first heard at LinkedIn, and they were, the sales Mike Derazin and the Sales Navigator team was using it a lot there to talk about
Right.
the benefit of Sales Navigator. Obviously, um, the first cut at that is easy. Like, do I have one or more contacts associated with a deal? CRM is sketchy, as you know, as we all know, in that because traditional CRM, many times you've only put in one contact. You're like,
Yep.
what's the minimum I need to do to get my commission check, right?
Yep.
Obviously, with more modern CRMs like ours and others, those contacts are automatically added. So you've got the count part of it down, but you don't have the relationship side. But that's really like, obviously LinkedIn is all about relationships. So how do you think about yourself as different or differentiated from something like Sales Navigator or just core LinkedIn?
Yeah, totally. I think LinkedIn will and always is the true source of truth of people. Like who's at the company, that's their data, that's their moat. Makes sense. I think the problem is that selling is not just names and faces. I mean, the number of people that come to me and say, "Hey, I used to map things in Sales Nav." Great. You made a beautiful picture in Sales Nav. You made all
Mhm.
the relationship lines. What's your first question your CRO is going to ask you? Who have we talked to?
Yeah,
That's not on LinkedIn. That's in email. It's in Calendar. It's in Slack. It's in Gong. It's in CRM. It's 50 other places to actually understand what the when I say relationship, a relationship is not a name. A
right.
relationship is all the context around that person. And there's still no one place to wake up to that picture that is actually visualizable so I can understand that I've only been talking to 5 people in marketing, none of them are directors, and I haven't talked to a single person in sales, and that's a problem because we
Right.
need to be in sales, marketing, and success if we have any chance of winning this account. Where do I get that story? And that is the homework that leaders have to give their reps to picture
Mhm.
manually to then have a baseline strategic conversation about what to do next. But
Right.
if you already have that picture by default building itself every single day from every email, every touch point, every CRM data point, every profile on the person, now all of a sudden you actually have the strategic baseline to go fix the deal, be proactive, not just do a retro of what you already know. I think that's really the distinction between what LinkedIn can do really well and what's missing from an actual workflow day to day to get a rep and team like winning deals.
Well, I think it's, as you pointed out, it sounds like the very high level distinction is, and I don't want to oversimplify here, is kind of manual versus automated, right? You could decide to go draw that account map inside of Sales Navigator, and when
Yep.
someone says, "How are we going and doing?" It's not connected to the CRM, but I can go bounce over to Sales Navigator and say, "Let me show you the account map," and I'm giving you the voiceover as to it, but it's not specifically tied to how many times I met with a person, what did they say in a conversation, what emails we exchange, any of that stuff, and that's where you guys are coming in. Mm.
Exactly. I think it's that almost heat map overlay of, yes, there's names and faces, but importantly, did I talk to them yesterday? Was it 3 months ago? Was I even in the room when that happened? If I'm taking on a new territory, what do they even care about from the 10 people I didn't even know existed when I showed up? So much of this is not just the single player of my situation, but come January, everyone's shifting their books, everyone's bringing in new people. All of this is about team selling too. You don't win enterprises without SEs and CSMs all in the same room. Where does everyone come together almost like for the Figma of their deals? Where is the deal canvas that everyone is swimming along in the same picture to actually then quarterback and say, "Hey, Sierra, I need your exact touch above line. We haven't heard back from them. I am pretty engaged with this person. Maybe SE, let's go work with their technical counterpart and get things going over there. Hey, CSM, I know you're trying to expand in this corner of the business. Maybe you should go talk to this person I'm engaging with because they're really excited about the same existing use case." That conversation does not have anywhere to start with right now without what we were talking about, the manual piece. But with
Right.
the automation, now we're, like, actually operationalizing multi-threading and team selling in the same view.
And are you guys bringing that back, pushing that back into the CRM, or is it just living inside of centralized? I know you're pulling all
Yeah,
the some.
this is a
Okay.
good segue into we actually raised from Salesforce recently.
Yeah.
Love Benioff and team, thank you. And jokingly, we always say, that the R in CRM doesn't really exist. Sorry, not sorry. Like, it's an amazing tool. Like, you guys are not a, multi-hundred-billion-dollar business for no reason. Like, this is a critical place to store all that data, but that kind of is what it is. It's a database. It's names and contacts and ops and accounts, but that no one ever said, "Hey, I wanna log into my database today and update some data."
Uh-huh.
They want a place of action that helps them understand their deal so they can move it forward, and in best case, AI providing them what to do next, like the GPS on their map as well, not just the map. So to our thesis, it's like, well, depending on where you are, where you live, the CRM, at least we're talking about legacy CRMs here,
Mhm.
legacy in that I generally think Salesforce makes some really cool moves recently, so I wouldn't
Yeah.
don't count them out, but all these massive organizations they're gonna have a really hard time, like DocuSign ripping out Salesforce anytime soon, right?
Yeah.
It just the reality is they're not going anywhere.
Yep.
But they have Salesforce in conjunction with Gong and G Suite and Slack and everything else, and yet somehow end of quarter deals still slip and stall.
Uh-huh.
So if we can be that layer that helps them orchestrate, but keeps their database up to date,
Yep.
RevOps is happy, the entire revenue org is happy, and all of a sudden your tools are actually working with each other versus just retroactive data entry, which is typically what's been true and why Salesforce has been stale and empty and, and ends up kind of not being reliable. Our goal is that it should come along for the ride as the database, but it's not the place that you wake up to because there's no visual to wake up to. It's just a row of contacts and tables.
So what are you writing back to Salesforce then?
Yeah, well, typically it's in our case, I mean, you could write anything to Salesforce, but I think what's important to us and our customers, it's who matters, are they still there, and what do they care about? Those are the
Uh-huh.
very simple things for a deal. And the who is coming from every email, calendar, call that we can push
Uh-huh.
into CRM naturally. It is the from every sentence they've spoken, why do they care? That should also persist.
Uh-huh.
And then are they still there? Right? Tracking if they're have they come and gone? Like the worst thing about Salesforce half the time is you log in and it's like 2 years of outdated contacts that have never been there anymore. Um, and then people are out here cold calling people that aren't even at the company
Right.
if we're, SDRs are reaching out. So that's really where we focus. It's all things people centric. It's the contact is really the core of what centralized focuses on.
So when you're configuring a customer, are you actually setting up custom fields for that? Like, what do they care about kind of field, or are you just writing into standard fields for some of that or their notes?
We can. It's kind of a mix on the customer.
Mhm.
Sometimes, with our like app managed package, we could push into our own custom fields and have our control over that. If they have existing ones they'd prefer us to, we can configure either or. Um, yeah, it really just depends. But I think the high level is that perks of being backed by them, we can very closely bidirectionally update them as the CRM. And if anything, make it stickier because it's actually useful now. Like the data in there is meaningful, and we're almost the not only orchestration layer from the end user experience, but also from the ops data flow experience as well.
So is there a single kind of KPI? So like, we've got revenue leaders who listen to this podcast, is there a single, I know that in the world of customer success, you oftentimes have like a cheese score, a customer health index kind of thing like
Yeah,
that. Are you
yeah.
doing, a multi-threading score or a kind of, health score of any kind that I can kind of, that a revenue leader or manager can look at and quickly kind of get a visual as to how they're doing on each of their accounts or their team is doing on each of their accounts?
Yeah, yeah, we've thought a lot about this, and actually, really big shout out to Haley Katzman, who's the VP of Strat Sales at HighSpot. She's amazing, love her, and HighSpot thinks really strategically about this, and that multi-threading is nothing but personas that you have to be in a certain function seniority combination of that, right? Like for HighSpot, I'm pretty sure it's MOS, which is marketing, ops, sales, and sales enablement. If we're
Mhm.
not above the line director plus across MOS or power threaded, Haley's not going to even forecast it.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter, right? It's like we're not going to win. And we've actually baked in a very similar idea, which is in centralized, you can config exactly which personas you go after,
Huh.
marketing director plus, CS manager plus, etc.,
Yeah.
and define all of those. And we will actually, because we're automatically creating the map and placing people on the map and knowing if they've responded to you, can literally give you the insight zoomed out of, hey, across your book, 40% of your accounts are not engaged at all in marketing, no replies
Hmm.
in the persona you sell to
Okay.
versus 10% in another function versus another. And now as a frontline manager, I can choose a rep, I can drill down persona where marketing not engaged, and I can do something about it. I'm not telling my rep, hey, you're not multi-threaded, fix it. I'm literally giving you the map on how to fix it. And I better check the next time from an accountability perspective that those people we found better be lit up green engaged on the map as well. So we're
Yeah.
going from all the way out of multi-threading means persona-based engagement where we have to be, and centralized has already answered the question because we auto-mapped it, all the way down to brass tacks. Hey, day to day, like where are you living to fix that picture? Not just wallowing about the fact that you're not threaded and you're stuck and you're out of wall. That's really how we think about the leader zoomed out value.
Okay. Um, for those listening who have not gotten a raise from Salesforce Ventures, talk a little bit about that process. Kind of who approached who, and what was kind of the light bulb moment for them where they were like, "Oh, we want to go write a check." Right?
Yeah, yeah, I love the team over there. Jason, Caroline, Dylan when he was there. There's an amazing crew. Rob Keith and a bunch of folks on the venture side. Um, it was right after, or very close to YC Demo Day when we were thinking about the fundraise, which
Yep.
was it was like March, April timeframe.
Mhm.
And we had a really great conversation actually with Cal Henderson. Obviously, incredible guy, literally co-founder of Slack. He's a legend. And Will worked really close with him when he built Huddles. So we had
Mhm.
lunch with Cal, and he was really stoked about it, and thought we were really onto something. Obviously, future of work as a concept made a lot of sense too. And so, he came on board as a really great supporter, and he said, "You should probably talk to Slack Fund," which is the early venture arm of Salesforce Ventures. They've now since merged, but that was kind of the early venture arm. And we talked to them on Monday. They thought it made a ton of sense because the whole thesis was, what is the new future of work? It's all about relationships, and today there is no visual to understand this. It just doesn't exist. Um, Despite every tool under the sun, you don't have a place to come to make sense of that story. And then that translated to actually on a Friday going to the top of Salesforce Tower, meeting the ventures crew and pitching to them over there. Loved it. Great time. Ohana floor is a very nice view, I will say. And yeah, I think Salesforce is a group of really smart people, and I think what they understand is that the world is shifting to where relationships are becoming the moat, and if you are not already realizing this, even mid-market deals, 30, 40, 50K are requiring CFO approval. What used to just be like a swipe of some director's credit card is now like legitimately every dollar counts. We're in budget cuts. The buyer committee needs to take a look that's bigger and bigger, and As a result, you as a seller have to multi-thread even harder than before. You can't stop at just your one champion that's the manager. You have to get to the director, the C-suite, find the warm pathways in across your execs and team, and have a place to team sell that story together. And with that recurring trend, I think the answer is there's a lot of noise in AI SDRs right now. You probably noticed. Like, great,
Yeah.
you got the foot in the door. You're building pipe. Makes sense. Maybe a hot take, but I think that's the easy part. The hard part is you got the foot in the door in a DocuSign. What are you doing for the next 10 months to actually turn that into a seven-figure deal?
Right.
That is a lot of work ahead of you, a lot of internal team selling and corralling, and no shared place of collab to make that happen. You're just hoping your AE is like the most amazing quarterback that knows how to do it. And maybe they are for one deal. What about the other 50 in your book that requires that same level of rigor and understanding? That is where things start breaking down. And so I think for leaders listening to this call, it's like, hey, let's be real for a second. You get to end of quarter, look at all your close loss reasons. They might say budget, they might say something else, product. In reality, how many of them were because you were too low or single threaded? You never talked to the EB, you never got to the DM, you didn't get to a real champion. And if you had a picture that answered that and made it crystal clear day one, how would that have helped you with your deal strategy and coaching and actually game plan to get into those accounts?
Yeah.
That really is the shift in where the revenue is going to come from and kind of the philosophy for the company to shift towards.
Okay. Have you, can you give some anecdotes either of customers where you heard about these kind of, painful single threaded losses or scenarios where, maybe they rescued something because they had centralized in there and got to go see that they were spread too thin?
Yeah, totally. One of my favorites actually was pretty recent. We just went wall to wall across Intercom's post sales org, so RM and CS. Love them over there. Janan's incredible. Megan Hahn. It's like some of my favorite people. And they had a really interesting use case where even during the POC we did, there was an account they were working where they'd gotten stuck at one of the directors of success in their case,
Mhm.
or kind of like support. And things were starting to look like it might end up being a churn. They weren't really sure what was going on over there. And that director of support was being really cagey. They weren't explaining who else they had to get to have the right conversation. They
Huh.
were just kind of basically gatekeeping the answer. And they put that account in centralized, and two very interesting things happened there. One, the entire picture of the account automatically created itself, high and wide, C-suite support, etc., of where we were. It was obvious that the main point of contact was that director of support. It was
Mhm.
also obvious that we hadn't talked to anyone in the C-suite. It was empty. In other words, there was no exec sponsorship here. At the same time, what Centralize also does is proactively recommend who you missed in your personas. And the
Uh,
first person they recommended was on the left side, the CCO that they didn't even know existed in that org that actually met the exact criteria of typically who would be above that director of support they were
uh-huh.
talking. They added that person to the map, centralized enriched their email, their phone number, their entire history, the person itself. And as a result, basically within a week, they're able to figure out this is the person. Let's reach out. They got a meeting on the books and actually started figuring out how this becomes more of a hey, this is a company wide C suite level initiative you guys should know about. Here's how we can strategically go around the people that we're talking to and actually unblock yourself from being stuck, which is what
Right.
happens most of the time. So just the idea of like de-risking an account simply because we could give you the picture that you don't even have to think. It's like stupid simple to see, hey, we have no exec engagement. We're stuck at this one guy and everyone else is red. It's gone
Mhm.
cold. We got to do something. Here's who we missed. Here's like the few warm pathways we should have started with. And now look at that. We got a meeting on the books with the C suite.
And I assume you dog food your own or drink your own champagne, whatever, and kind of, phrase you want to use for that. What have you found in terms of your own GTM, in terms of, what is your ideal customer? What does that
Sure.
buying community look like? And, what are some of the lessons that you've kind of learned and kind of going to market over the last, 12, 18 months?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for folks listening, if you guys find yourself in the same bucket, it's typically who gets excited. It's the folks where multi-threading is non-negotiable to winning. It's synonymous with winning. And typically what that means is the enterprise and strat segments and even mid-market plus. We're not a tool for SMBs. Your map is one person.
Mhm.
It is for the folks where you're going up market, you have to be high and wide, you sell to multiple personas, and doing that at scale just becomes untenable. And you're kind of flying blind as a result. And so typically that's the directors and VPs of enterprise sales, enterprise success, account management, even marketing where they
Mm,
need this understanding at scale. And then correspondingly, the folks on the ground using it are the enterprise AEs, CSMs, SDRs, and AMs.
yeah.
In terms of the go-to-market, I actually, if there's anything I can share, it's it's been really cool to watch what centralized changes in your deal process that, like, wasn't possible before. One thing I've learned, and even just the last few weeks that I've been noticing it, I've actually been doing it myself every single day. Like, you're right, we drink our champagne every day. Everyone that we've talked to, if you're a champion of ours listening, you know you've already seen centralized because I pull it up and I show them themselves.
Mm,
That's, like, easily the most exciting piece of centralized, which is a lot of people think this is about deal collaboration, internal relationship mapping, and
mm,
almost like strategy for a QBR for a one-on-one. That is totally true. HighSpot ran all their QBRs out of centralized for the last 3 quarters. What is equally true is, I was talking to a leader yesterday morning, and his main use case was, "What is a deal if I'm gonna win, it's pain and it's a champion. I need both of
mm,
those things to be true." But a champion, a lot of people think is just someone who's nice to you, and you feel good, and then you get happy
yeah.
ears and things go wrong. What is a true pressure test of a champion? It is pulling up their org chart in front of them, showing them that they're your champion, and having an opinionated view on who else we should be going after. And instead of asking and getting gatekept on who we go after, showing them and getting corrected because people
Mm,
love correcting you.
got it.
You say, "Hey, I think it should be Doug and James," and they're like, "No, no, no, that's not right. It's just like Jenny over here and Marsha. Like they're the 2 that are important." "Perfect. Oh, Jenny, Marsha, I already have 'em on my map. Click, click, click. Great. Who do they report to again? Oh, Jeffrey? Amazing. Great. Yeah, why don't we bring in Jenny and Marsha on the next one?" That is such a different conversation versus, "Hey, I know this has been great. Like, where do we go from here? Who do you think we should pull in?" Like, "I don't know. I'll ask my team. I'll get back to you next week." Next week never
Right.
happens. You get stuck. The change when you can be a trusted advisor and actually have a point of view and use this as a customer facing collateral is what I do in every single sales cycle. After
Uh-huh.
my disco call in the demo, I'll pull themselves up because they already are on the map because they're in a calendar event, they're in an email, they're in a call recording on the last one. They see themselves, they see what they've said, they see who I think should be around them. And by the third call, they've already told me who else gets excited about this that's on the next call. Like
Yeah.
the progression is just it's really cool to see that. And I just don't think that was actually frankly possible without having done all that homework prior if you were to do it the manual way. But no one
Yeah.
does, and so it's never been something you could unlock as like a true champion pressure test.
And are you building your org charts, through, kind of third-party sources, LinkedIn data, AI, all the above, right? How do you kind of understand when you're walking that example you just gave, you're walking into an account, let's say you're walking in an intercom, you're saying, "I think it's these people." You're obviously showing some kind of org structure
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
that's that's in that relationship map. So what's kind of without revealing the secret sauce, what's the secret sauce?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I will say that's basically the core of how
Yeah,
centralized I think is a
yeah.
hopefully valuable product here, and that it is the secret sauce. But what I'll say is, Um, if you can show people high and wide, not necessarily the reporting lines, because frankly,
Mhm.
if anyone tells you externally they know who reports to who, they're lying to you. People
Yeah.
internally don't even know that answer. But to the extent that I can show you in the personas that are important to us and who I think should be adjacent to that person, that's still a very easy visual of
Mhm.
C-suite, VP, director, manager in sales, success, marketing, grid-like view. All the boxes in director are filled out in sales and success. There's not a single person in marketing, but centralized told me that I think it might be John and Jeff. What do you
Uh-huh.
think, Doug, as my champion? And
Got it.
then now it becomes a real dialogue.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. Like literally, I was on a call the other day, and it was part of a POC evaluation, and the person who was kind of assessing was an AE at the company. So
Mhm.
there's a CS leader that was on the call, and there was an AE on the call to kind of get both perspectives. At the end of the call, I pulled up themselves and centralized, and I said, "Hey, I think it should be these 2 folks. What do you think?" And the person on the call, the CS leader was like, "No, no, no, I'm pretty sure it's these 3 or 4." And the cool thing about centralized is we could just add it real time as we're talking, not I'll go back and fix it later and come back to you. It's like, "Oh, this is what you're saying? Okay, let's go." And the AE started scoffing, and she was like, "Why are we doing this guy's job for him? Like, what's going on over here?" Well, like, she's, like, laughing at her team, like, Why are you telling him all this information?" I'm like, "Dude, this is why you want a POC. Like, this is what you'll unlock for your conversations because it opens the dialogue as a partnership versus, like,
Right.
this antagonizing, I'll tell you later" kind of vibe. It's just, like, hilarious to see the real time reactions on that.
So tell me a little bit about how AI and, the buzzword of du jour agents kind of fit into your product and your roadmap. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been an exciting last year, I would say, in terms of kind of what we brought to market so far, and I think there's 3 phases of centralized. Phase 1 was the data, right? Just
Mhm.
like the connectors that are out there, if you don't have every GON call, email, CRM, etcetera,
Yep.
what are you doing? There's nothing to show. So that's
Yep.
baseline. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is what's in the market, which is the map. That
Mhm.
was not there before. There was no medium of delivery on what you need to do in a deal that would create itself, and that's really the crux of centralized. It's the AI-powered relationship mapping. Already what we're building with phase 3 is you have the data, you have the map, where's the GPS? Where's the
Mhm.
Waze for your deal? What is going to point you almost running 24/7 into what you should do next based on historically from what it's learning, what you do at this phase in the cycle. Hey, you sell to 3 personas, you're only at 2 of them, you're missing the head of marketing, by the way, that's John. This is what John cares about from every sentence you've spoken with Fred and Jenny over here in sales.
Mhm.
Go. Like, that should show up at your doorstep, and that's already possible now because in some sense, like, that's what an agent can do. It can take a bunch of tools across conversational data, person level data,
Mhm.
relationship data, map based reporting data, and then actually interpret the right next thing to recommend as kind of the next step in your list of directions when you're trying to get the path to sign effectively. If path to sign is your path, this is every stage along path to sign. And so I think that's where we already have some of that baked out, and some of our early customers are getting to beta that, like Highspot and Brex, Cresta, Intercom, a few of these, like some of our favorite customers that are getting that early access. But that really is the future of centralized. It's
Mhm.
agents for account-based selling. You should be able to start anywhere, stage 0, not even stage 1 to close, and know every day of the week, who have I talked to? What does that mean who I've missed? How do I fill in the white space? And from everything that's happened till date, what do I bring to them to keep progressing the deal forward? And that's just a checkpoint all the way until you get to sign.
So let's talk about another aspect of agents, which is, people talk a lot about the pricing model, right? People talk about this whole
Yeah,
outcome-based pricing. I presume you're not doing it at this point, right?
not currently,
More
no.
more traditional enterprise pricing?
It's actually a hybrid model. There's a really good, chat I had with Manny at Paid, and then,
Mhm.
uh, I think it was Eli at Sierra, if I remember correctly. Hopefully I remember, who it was, but he runs a lot of the pricing at Sierra, and Sierra is very outcome based,
Mhm.
naturally, as is Intercom, as is any of these
Yep.
companies where I think support's like an easy one in some ways because
Yeah.
the only way outcome works is you can define an outcome concretely and then
Right.
price against it.
Yeah.
What we're describing, the idea of going from stage 1 to close, that's hard to do attribution on as, like, a
Yeah.
real outcome. Unless I'm, like, legitimately taking a percentage of your contract size, which I would love to do, that'd be amazing. I think that's
Yep.
no better actually proof of centralized, but in absence of that, I think you have to do some kind of a hybrid where your cogs are still not gonna blow up, and that might get exponentially bigger even if your seat count doesn't change, right?
Mhm.
Because there's still a big cost to agents running around for every call and email, even if you
Yep.
still have the same 5 people working 50 accounts today and 200 accounts tomorrow. That
Yep.
will meaningfully change your costs. So, we think about centralized in terms of 2 ways and try to make it as dead simple as possible. It is still a seat-based, putting the foot in the door, people on the ground using the product, but we have what we call the centralized engine, which is how much data are you throwing at us? Like, what are we actually crunching for you that's powering all the job changes and people priorities and putting them on the map in the right place and all
Mhm.
those hierarchies? And that is effectively a breakdown on what we think the amount of data is going to be in the system and trying to come with like a predictable flat based on that. That's today's version. Who knows what's going to change tomorrow? But
Yep.
I think that's at least making it helping us scale with them as more data flies into the system without being a you know, revenue retracting business if seat counts start dropping.
Got it. Got it. I know we're running up on time here, so let me shift gears and go to this personal round, and so we can learn a little bit about you.
Sure.
Just starting off, like, what's something that listeners would be surprised to know about you?
Before I got to USC, I wanted to be a neurosurgeon my entire life. Like, I wanted to be a doctor. And my summer before college, I actually went to India and was in the OR shadowing a neurosurgeon. That was like where I wanted to go. And then I lucked out, decided to just change my intro to BME for intro to CS my first week of college. And yeah, it worked out.
That's a good one. That's a good one. What do you like to do for fun?
Yeah, I mean, the founder life is not very conducive to too
Yeah.
much fun on the side, but, if you can tell, I have a cute little dog. His name's, Sora. He's a Shiba. We got him last year. He keeps me busy. He's sleeping on the couch right now. Love going on hikes with him and my wife, Amanda. We get a chance to explore together. So usually it's a combo of nature, family, and then centralized.
I'm glad you pointed out because that was going to be the next question if you didn't answer about the sweatshirt. Um, and then what's a product that you personally just love that's made
Ooh, I
sense to
mean,
you?
I am an engineer, right? And I think
Mhm.
Devin and Cursor are both just insanely cracked tools. Like the biggest alpha, having seen Stack Overflow become what I lived and breathed every day at college, trying to figure out the right thing to do, to becoming, at least from that use case, irrelevant overnight with things like AI coding tools, and just like 10x unlock when Will and I were building the first versions of Centralize on my couch right here. Like that was only possible as a team of two because of what those unlocked. And
Yeah.
I generally don't think there's many tools out there where people are like screaming and kicking if it's taken away from them.
Yeah.
Those easily fall into that bucket. Where like generally without AI coding tools, I don't think we can go back from those now. Like that is the future.
And then finally, just how can listeners stay in touch with you and kind of help you on your journey?
Yeah, yeah. I like to say I'm somewhat active on LinkedIn, so you'll probably pop
Mhm.
me see me around over there. Otherwise, Ratchet at usecentralize.com. We've been cooking a lot of fun stuff that's happening in the platform. Yeah, I mean, reach out anytime, email, book a demo. Happy to show you the latest personally through anytime now till all the fun stuff ahead of us.
Sounds great. Well, Ratchet, thank you so much for taking the time. Great to see you, man. Really appreciate you sharing your insights with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.